Sentence. At the family dinner, my brother's voice cut through the clinking of glasses. My name is Joyce Dean, and I'm 30 years old. At a family dinner in my hotel in suburban Omaha, Nebraska, my brother's voice sliced through the tension. Either you give me the hotel or I'll take you to court and make you lose everything, he declared, his eyes burning with greed. The table froze, forks suspended in midair. I'd felt this storm brewing for years, always the overlooked sibling. But I wasn't backing down. Leaning in, I whispered a few words into his ear. His face drained of color, his hands shook, and the air seemed to choke him. What secret did I hold that unraveled him so completely? That was my ace, one I kept close, ready to flip the game. The night was far from over, and my fight was just beginning. Don't miss the explosive truth. Hit subscribe and ring the bell to see how my story unfolds and justice prevails. Taking over the hotel meant stepping into a legacy I couldn't ignore. Growing up in our Omaha home, I was always overshadowed by my brother, the star my parents placed on a pedestal. My mom, a homemaker, doted on his every achievement, praising his smallest wins as if they were monumental. My dad, a small business owner, saw him as the key to their dreams, backing his bold ideas even when they crumbled. My own efforts, steady, quiet, reliable, went unnoticed, as if I were invisible in their eyes. Their favoritism wasn't just a preference. It was a chasm that kept me at a distance, always reaching for approval I'd never get. My grandmother, Alice Perry, was different. She saw my worth when no one else did. Her hotel in suburban Omaha, worth $2.5 million, was more than a business. It was her life's work, built from years of determination. I spent countless hours with her, sorting through her old ledgers, preparing meals when her strength waned, or simply listening to her stories of the hotel's early days. She called me her anchor, a bond forged through care and trust. My brother, meanwhile, was consumed by real estate ventures that never succeeded. He'd show up with grand promises, asking for loans. She rarely approved, his visits brief and self-serving. She saw through his charm, and he never earned her confidence. When Alice's will named me the owner of the hotel, I felt a mix of honor and responsibility. It wasn't just a property. It was a symbol of her belief in me. I threw myself into the role, learning the ropes, meeting with staff, checking finances, envisioning ways to keep her dream alive. But my family's reaction was anything but supportive. I overheard their murmured complaints about fairness, their voices sharp with resentment. They didn't say it outright, but their belief was clear. My brother, despite his string of failures, should have inherited it. My mom's comments about his potential stung like accusations, while my dad's questions about the hotel's profits felt like a challenge. My brother was the boldest, pitching new schemes, as if I'd hand over the keys to fund them. I wasn't blind to their intentions. Alice had warned me about family greed, sharing stories of relatives who'd tried to sway her decisions. She chose me because she trusted my loyalty, not my brother's empty promises. That trust became my foundation, but it also made me a target. I started keeping detailed notes of every interaction, sensing the tension building. Their favoritism had always hurt, but now it was a threat. I wasn't just protecting a hotel, I was defending the life Alice believed I could build. The storm was coming, and I was ready to face it. That dinner, I had already made the hotel my home. The family gathering was supposed to be a simple meal, a chance to talk in the hotel's private dining room, but plates of roast chicken and green beans went almost untouched as the tension rose. My brother leaned forward, his gaze cold. Either you give me the hotel or I'll take you to court and make you lose everything, he declared, his voice cutting through the silence. My mom and dad, sitting beside him, nodded slightly, their faces hard with agreement. It felt like a betrayal, a punch to the gut. Their loyalty to him was unmistakable. I'd endured their dismissive treatment my whole life, but this crossed a line. My heart raced, not from fear but from a fire I'd never felt before. I refused to be invisible any longer. I leaned across the table, stared into his eyes, and whispered a few words in his ear, so soft no one else could hear. His confidence crumbled. His skin drained of color. His fingers twitched on the table, and his eyes looked away, unable to meet mine. What secret had I revealed that struck him so deeply? It was my leverage, the weapon I held close, and I wasn't going to give up the hotel. The room fell utterly silent, all eyes fixed on his unraveling. My mother's napkin slipped from her hand and dropped onto her plate. My father shifted in his seat, clearing his throat, but no words came. I sat up straight, my voice calm but firm. "I'm keeping the hotel," I said, cutting through the heavy pause. He tried to speak, but his words came out broken and jumbled. My parents exchanged a tense look. Their confidence wavered. They had expected me to fold, to shrink back as I always did. But I was different now, resolute. He pushed his chair back with a screech, his face twisted with anger and something else, perhaps panic. "You'll pay for this," he hissed, but the threat sounded hollow. My parents stormed out after him, their footsteps heavy as the door slammed behind them, leaving their plates behind. The hotel staff standing nearby busied themselves avoiding my gaze. I sat alone at the table, feeling the sting of betrayal settle in my chest. But I was not defeated. The secret, I'd whispered, was my armor, and their challenge was only the opening shot of a fight I was ready to win. I rose, smoothed my dress, and went to the front desk to check that night's reservations. My mind raced ahead, plotting my next moves. Their words, court loss, everything echoed, but I pushed them aside. The hotel was my responsibility, a legacy I deserved to keep through loyalty. My brother thought he could intimidate me, but he didn't know the resolve I had forged. Their exit was not the end. It was the spark of a battle I was prepared to face. The next morning, I drove to my friend's place across town. Her apartment, tucked in a quiet Omaha neighborhood, felt like a refuge after the chaos of the dinner. My friend, a 35-year-old accountant with a sharp eye for numbers, greeted me with a quick hug and a cup of coffee. We sat at her kitchen table, a small safe from my grandmother's office between us. I'd brought it from the hotel, its weight a reminder of the secrets it might hold. My brother's threat from the night before echoed in my mind, but I was determined to find something to fight back with. I turned the key, and the safe clicked open, revealing a stack of documents tied with a faded ribbon. We spread them out, the pages, yellowed but meticulous. My friend's eyes widened as she scanned the first few. "This is big," she murmured, pointing to a loan agreement. It showed my brother and parents had borrowed $250,000 from my grandmother for his real estate ventures, signed years ago with no record of repayment. Another document, a ledger, detailed how they'd misused $80,000 from a separate inheritance meant for family expenses, redirecting it to his failed projects. I leaned back, the pieces falling into place. My whisper at the dinner, those few words that made my brother falter, was about this loan. He thought he'd buried it, that no one would dig up the truth. My friend looked at me, her voice low. "You knew about this, didn't you? That's what you said to him." I nodded, my jaw tight. I hadn't known the full details until now, but I'd heard enough from my grandmother to suspect he'd taken advantage of her. She'd mentioned his debts in passing, her tone heavy with disappointment, but I'd never seen the proof until today. We spent hours combing through the papers. Each page was a thread in a web of betrayal, promissory notes, bank statements, even a letter from my grandmother refusing to lend my brother more money. My friend calculated the totals, her fingers flying over her laptop. "This isn't just negligence," she said. "They diverted funds they had no right to touch." My stomach churned, not with shock, but with clarity. This was why my grandmother trusted me with the hotel, why she'd chosen me to carry her legacy forward. She knew I'd protect it. With these documents, I had more than just proof, I had leverage. My brother's threat to drag me to court was hollow now. If he wanted a legal fight, I'd be ready with evidence that could turn the tables. My friend stacked the papers neatly, her expression serious. "You need to get these to a lawyer," she advised. I agreed, already thinking ahead. The hotel wasn't just a building, it was my grandmother's dream, and I wouldn't let their greed tear it down. I left her apartment with the documents secured in a folder, my resolve stronger than ever. The drive back to the hotel felt different, like I was carrying a shield. My family thought they could bully me into giving up what was rightfully mine, but they'd underestimated me. Those papers were my ammunition, and I was ready to use them to defend everything my grandmother had built. The fight was far from over, but I was armed now, and I wasn't backing down. By the end of the week, I was in my lawyer's office. The downtown Omaha building was all glass and sharp angles, a stark contrast to the hotel's warm brick exterior. My lawyer, a seasoned professional with a calm demeanor, sat across from me, the documents from my grandmother's safe spread out on her desk. She adjusted her glasses, her eyes scanning the loan agreement and ledger with a precision that steadied my nerves. "Your family's case is flimsy," she said, her voice matter of fact. "They're banking on intimidation, not evidence." We dove into the strategy, mapping out a counter lawsuit. The papers showed my brother and parents owed $250,000 for his failed business ventures, with no repayments made. The $80,000 they'd misused from another inheritance was even more damning. My lawyer outlined how we'd use these to challenge their claim to the hotel, framing their actions as a breach of trust. She was confident the evidence would undermine any attempt to contest my grandmother's will. I felt a surge of certainty, the weight of those documents giving me ground to stand on. Later that day, my aunt called. At 58, she'd always been the family's quiet observer, rarely picking sides. Her voice was steady but heavy over the phone. "Your dad tried to get your grandmother to forgive those debts years ago," she revealed. "She refused, said it was a matter of principle." I gripped the phone, picturing my grandmother's resolute expression. That refusal was another piece of the puzzle, proof she'd seen through their schemes long before I did. My aunt's words fueled my determination, a reminder of why I was fighting. Back at the hotel, I pored over my notes, organizing every detail for the case. My lawyer had requested additional records, bank statements, emails, anything to strengthen our position. I spent evenings digging through old files, finding a few more receipts tied to my brother's ventures. Each discovery sharpened my focus. This wasn't just about the hotel. It was about honoring the trust my grandmother placed in me. My family thought they could bully me into submission, but I was building a fortress of evidence. My lawyer and I met again, refining our approach. She suggested we emphasize my years of dedication to the hotel, contrasting it with my brother's reckless spending. "The court will see who valued her legacy," she said. I nodded, feeling a fire ignite inside me. I wasn't just defending a property. I was defending my place in the world my grandmother believed I could shape. The thought of facing my family in court no longer daunted me, it drove me. I was ready to stand my ground and protect what was rightfully mine. 6 weeks later, I walked into an Omaha courtroom. The room was stark, with polished wood benches and a high ceiling that echoed every whisper. My lawyer stood beside me, her briefcase packed with the evidence we'd meticulously prepared. Across the aisle, my brother and parents sat with their attorney, their faces set in defiant masks. The air was thick with tension, but I held my head high, anchored by the truth I carried. My lawyer took the floor first, her voice steady as she presented our case. She laid out the evidence, a loan agreement showing my brother and parents owed my grandmother $250,000 never repaid, and a ledger detailing their misuse of $80,000 from another inheritance. She didn't linger on the numbers, instead emphasizing their pattern of financial irresponsibility. The documents were irrefutable, each page a testament to their betrayal of my grandmother's trust. Then their lawyer stood, his tone sharp and accusing. He painted me as a schemer, claiming I'd manipulated my grandmother to secure the hotel. My brother took the stand, his voice dripping with venom. "She's selfish," he said, glaring at me. "She turned our grandmother against us for her own gain." My mom nodded, her eyes cold, while my dad added, "She never cared about the family, only the hotel." Their words stung, but I refused to flinch. They were lies, meant to wound, not facts. My lawyer countered with precision. She presented my grandmother's will, its language clear and unwavering, naming me as the sole heir to the hotel. She highlighted my years of care hours spent helping with chores, managing accounts, and preserving the business my grandmother built. My client earned her trust. My lawyer said her voice cutting through their accusations. The will reflects her wishes, not manipulation. She submitted letters from hotel staff testifying to my dedication, and a statement from my aunt confirming my grandmother's refusal to forgive their debts. The judge, a sharp woman named Judith Coleman, listened intently, her pen moving swiftly across her notes. Her presence commanded the room, her gaze piercing as she questioned both sides. When my brother stumbled over his explanation of the unpaid loan, she raised an eyebrow, her skepticism clear. My parents' claims of family loyalty faltered under her scrutiny. I felt a quiet confidence growing. The truth was on my side. After hours of arguments, Judith Coleman delivered her ruling. The plaintiff's case lacks merit, she declared, her voice firm. The will is valid, and the evidence of financial misconduct is compelling. She dismissed their claim to the hotel, ordered them to cover my legal fees, and flagged their debts for further review. My brother's shoulders slumped, and my parents exchanged stunned glances. The courtroom seemed to still, the weight of her words settling over us. I stood as the gavel struck, a wave of relief washing over me. Justice felt hard-won, undeniable, like a fire that had burned away years of doubt. My family's accusations had crumbled, exposed as the desperate lies they were. I glanced at my lawyer, who gave me a small nod, her eyes steady with pride. My grandmother's legacy was safe, and I'd fought for it with everything I had. The victory wasn't just legal, it was personal, a reclaiming of my place in her story. The day after the hearing, my parents showed up at the hotel. They stood in the lobby, their faces a mix of defiance and desperation, as if expecting me to soften after the courtroom loss. I met them at the front desk, my posture firm, the weight of the victory still fresh. "You need to leave," I said, my voice steady. "Cut contact, or I'll make sure every cent of those debts is collected." My mom's eyes widened, her lips parting as if to argue, but my dad's hand on her arm silenced her. They turned and walked out, their steps heavy, no words exchanged. The consequences hit them hard. The court had flagged their debts, the $250,000 loan and the $80,000 they'd misused. Creditors moved quickly, seizing their assets to cover what they owed. Their house, a place filled with memories I'd long stopped cherishing, was sold to settle part of the balance. My brother's car, his last symbol of pride, was repossessed. Their financial stability unraveled, leaving them scrambling to rebuild. I didn't revel in their downfall, but I felt no guilt either. They'd chosen this path when they tried to take what was mine. A few days later, an email from my brother landed in my inbox. The subject line read, "I'm sorry," but the words felt hollow, a last-ditch effort to salvage something. I read the first line, some vague excuse about stress and bad decisions, then deleted it without a second thought. His apologies couldn't undo the lies he'd told in court, the accusations of selfishness and manipulation. I'd spent years overshadowed by him, and I was done letting his words hold any power over me. My Uncle 55 called soon after, his voice gentle but cautious. "I'm sorry for what they put you through," he said, offering sympathy from the sidelines. He'd stayed out of the fight, never taking a side, but his words didn't sway me. "I don't need pity," I told him, my tone sharp but not cruel. "I need peace." I wasn't interested in their games anymore, empty gestures or half-hearted outreach. My family had shown their true colors, and I wasn't going back to the way things were. I threw myself into the hotel, focusing on its future. I met with staff to plan upgrades, reviewed budgets, and started sketching ideas for a new marketing campaign. The work grounded me, a reminder of why I'd fought so hard. My grandmother's legacy wasn't just a building, it was a purpose, a chance to build something lasting. I found strength in that, a clarity that no family drama could shake. I'd stood up to their greed, faced their lies, and come out stronger. There was no looking back, only forward to a future I'd earned through every battle. A year later, I stood on my hotel's balcony watching the Nebraska sunset. The sky burned with hues of orange and pink, a quiet beauty that felt like a reward for all I'd overcome. The hotel had become more than a business, it was a canvas for new dreams. I'd transformed the lobby into a gallery for local artists, their paintings and sculptures breathing life into the space. Guests lingered, drawn to the creativity, and bookings climbed steadily. I felt a surge of pride knowing I was building something meaningful. I'd also launched a charity in my grandmother's name, a fund to support women entrepreneurs in Omaha. The idea came from her stories of starting the hotel against all odds, a legacy of resilience I wanted to share. We'd already helped 3 women open small businesses, a bakery, a boutique, a tech startup, each success a nod to her spirit. The work was demanding, but it filled me with purpose, a way to honor her beyond the hotel's walls. My cousin 30 became my closest ally. She'd reached out after the trial, one of the few family members who understood my fight. We'd meet for coffee talking about everything but the past. Her new job, my plans for the hotel, our shared love of old jazz records. Her support was a lifeline, a reminder that not all family ties were tainted. "You did what was right," she told me once, her voice warm with conviction. Those words stayed with me, a quiet validation of my choices. Through it all, I learned to stand tall. The battles around the dinner table in the courtroom in my own heart taught me to value myself not just as my grandmother's heir, but as someone capable of shaping her own path. I'd spent years doubting my worth, overshadowed by others' expectations. Now I saw my strength clearly. The hotel wasn't just a victory, it was a testament to my resolve, a place where I'd carved out my own identity. My lesson was simple but hard-earned: fight for your rights, no matter how deep the betrayal cuts. Family ties can bind, but they can also blind you to your own value. I'd faced lies, greed, and accusations, but I came out stronger, not because of them, but in spite of them. I hoped my story would inspire others to stand firm, to protect what matters, even when the cost feels heavy. The sunset faded, but I stayed on the balcony, ready for whatever came next, rooted in the life I'd built.